I'm Chris. This is AFA, Addy Family Adventures, and today we're going to talk about the history of St. Patrick's Day. Like I said, so it's St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to talk about the history of St. Patrick's Day. And I know you're probably saying, if it's St. Patrick's Day, Chris, why aren't you wearing green? Well, I did have green on, and then it hit me. Having a green screen on, you would only see a floating head, which sounds cool, but probably won't be that great. So let's get started. So the history of St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is celebrated annually on March 17th, the anniversary of his death in the 5th century. The Irish have observed this day as a religious holiday for over 1,000 years. On St. Patrick's Day, which falls during the Christian season of Lent, Irish families would traditionally attend church in the morning and celebrate in the afternoon. Lenten prohibits it's prohibited against consumption of meat were waived, and people would dance and drink and feast on the traditional meat such as Irish bacon and cabbage. Who was St. Patrick? St. Patrick, who lived during the 5th century, is the patron saint of Ireland and its national apostle. Born in Roman Britain, he was kidnapped and brought to Ireland as a slave at the age of 16. He later escaped, but returned to Ireland and was accredited with bringing Christianity to its people. In the centuries following Patrick's death, believed to have been on March 17th, 461, the mythology surrounding his life became even more ingrained in the Irish culture. Perhaps the most well-known legend of St. Patrick is that he explained the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, using the 3 leaves of a native Irish clove, the shamrock. Since around the 9th or 10th century, people in Ireland have been observing the Roman Catholic feast day of St. Patrick's Day on March 17th. The first St. Patrick's Day parade took place not in Ireland, but in America. Records show that a St. Patrick's Day parade was held on March 17th, 1601, in a Spanish colony in what is now St. Augustine, Florida. The parade and a St. Patrick's Day celebration a year earlier was organized by a Spanish colony's Irish vicar Ricard Artur. More than a century later, homesick Irish soldiers serving in the English military marched in New York City on March 17, 1772 to honor the Irish patron saint. Enthusiasm for the St. Patrick's Day parade in the New York, Boston, and other early American cities only grew from there. Over the next 35 years, Irish patriotism among American immigrants flourished, prompting the rise of so-called Irish Aid. Societies like the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick and the Hibernian Society, each group would hold annual parades featuring bagpipes, which actually first became popular in Scottish and British armies, and drums. In 1848, several New York Irish Aid societies decided to unite their parades, form one official New York City St. Patrick's Day parade. Today, the parade is the world's oldest civilian parade and the largest in the United States, with over 150,000 participants. Each year, nearly 3 million people line the 1.5-mile parade route to watch the procession, which takes more than 5 hours. Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Savannah also celebrate the day with parades involving between 10 and 20,000 participants each. The Irish in America. Up until the mid-19th century, most Irish immigrants in America were members of the Protestant middle class. When the Great Potato Famine hit, that's how they say it, famine hit in Ireland in 1845, close to 1 million poor and uneducated Irish Catholics began pouring into America to escape starvation. Despised for their alien religious beliefs and unfamiliar accents by the American Protestant majority, the immigrants had trouble finding even menial jobs. When Irish Americans in the country cities took to the streets on St. Patrick's Day to celebrate their heritage, newspapers portrayed them in cartoons as drunk, violent monkeys. The American Irish soon began to realize, however, that their large and growing numbers endowed them with a political power that had yet to be exploited. They started to organize, and their voting bloc, known as the Green Machine, became an important swing vote for political hopefuls. Suddenly, annual St. Patrick's Day parade became a show of strength for Irish Americans, as well as a must-attended event for a slew of political candidates. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman attended New York City's St. Patrick's Day parade, a proud moment for the many Irish Americans whose ancestors had to fight stereotypes and radical prejudice to find acceptance in the New World. An Irish immigrant spread out over the United States, an Irish immigrants spread out over the United States. Other cities developed their own traditions. One of these is Chicago, annually dyeing of the Chicago River green. The practice started in 1962 when city pollution control workers used dyes to trace illegal sewage discharge and realized that the green dye might provide a unique way to celebrate the holiday. That year, they released 100 pounds of green vegetable dye into the river, enough to keep it green for a week. Today, in order to minimize environmental damage, only 40 pounds of the dye are used, and the river turns green for only several hours. Although Chicago historians claim their city's idea for a river green was original, some natives of Savannah, Georgia, whose St. Patrick's Day parade, the oldest in the nation, dates back to 1813, believe the idea originated in their town. They pointed out that in 1961, a hotel restaurant manager named Tom Woolley convinced city officials to dye Savannah's river green. The experiment didn't exactly work as planned, and the water only took on a slight greenish hue. Savannah never attempted to dye its river again, but Woolley maintains, though others refuse the claim, that the personal suggests the idea to Chicago's mayor, Richard J. Daley. St. Patrick's Day celebrations around the world. Today, people of all backgrounds celebrate St. Patrick's Day, especially throughout the United States, Canada, and Australia. Although North America is home to the largest production, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated around the world in locations far from Ireland, including Japan, Singapore, and Russia. Popular St. Patrick's Day's recipes include Irish soda bread, corned beef, and cabbage and champ. I hope I'm saying that right. In the United States, people often wear green on St. Patrick's Day. In modern day Ireland, St. Patrick's Day was traditionally been a religious occasion. In fact, Up until the 1970s, Irish laws mandated that pubs be closed on March 17th. Beginning in 1995, however, the Irish government began a national campaign to use interest in St. Patrick's Day to drive tourism and showcase Ireland and Irish culture to the rest of the world. What do leprechauns have to do with St. Patrick's Day? One icon of Irish holiday is the leprechaun. The original Irish name for these figures of folklore is, and I'm probably going to butcher it, Lobarison. Maybe not. Meaning small-bodied fellow. Belief in leprechauns probably stem from Celtic belief in fairies, tiny men and women who could use their magical powers to serve good or evil. In Celtic folk tales, leprechauns were cranky souls responsible for mending the shoes of the other fairies. Though only minor figures in Celtic folklore, leprechauns were known for their trickery, which they often used to protect their much fabled treasure. Leprechauns have their own holiday on May 13th. I didn't know that. That's something new. But are also celebrated on St. Patrick's, with many dressing up as the wily fairies. So, that is the history of St. Patrick's Day. I did get this from history.com, and I will put the link in the description. So if you want to come and check out the page on the internet yourself, you can. It's real interesting, and so this is, I believe, my 4th video in this series. So, as always, if you like my content, please subscribe, like, and comment, and I hope to catch you on the next adventure. And remember, adventure is out there.